Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center and joined now by Elite Prospects Cam Robinson, who typically is the Tuesday guy for us. So thank you for being flexible schedule-wise today, Cam.
Yeah.
We have a developing situation with Ratu, and we've talked a little bit about him here over the last few weeks, going back to Young Stars. But he survives through the cuts yesterday, as does Baines. We'll ask you about him in a second. And now looks like he's got a realistic shot to make this roster, if not this lineup, depending on the health and return to play for Dakota Joshua, now Pius Suter, who's sitting out as well. What's been different about Ratu this season compared to the guy we saw last year with the Abbey Canucks?
Well, I think the obvious thing is the foot speed, is that it's been an issue for him forever. Like going back to his 16-year-old season, even when he was projected to be a really, really high pick, it was like, if the feet get there. And then, I heard he had that quote where he's like, I had like a light bulb go off this summer where it's like, I needed to get faster. First of all, I thought the light bulb just went off now. But regardless of that, is that, he obviously put in some focused work in improving that area of his game, because that needed to happen. And it's happened. He looks quicker. He looks stronger. I think the details of his game have really impressed the coaching staff. His face-off acumen being always on his strong side somehow. It's really beneficial, especially on a team that's light on right-handed centers. So, he's kind of bringing a little bit of everything to the table. And, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and I said that, he's having a great camp. He had a great Young Stars, but I didn't think he was realistically going to beat some of these veterans out for a job. And now to see Giuseppe on waivers, like, that's an NHL player, right? He's already beaten one NHL player. And the same for Baines. Surprising to see Baines outkick Giuseppe as well. But he's done basically everything he can do to earn himself a roster spot. And it's just going to come down to numbers, I think, too, right? With Suter out, that gives him another opportunity. Teddy Bluger's back skating, so we'll see how that goes. I saw that he was lining up in the middle on that third line, and that's where Ratu had been playing primarily this preseason. So I don't think he's there yet. The expectation in my mind is that it would probably be better to have him playing first line minutes in the farm than playing as your 13th forward in the bigs, but we'll have to see.
Well, answer me this. Do you think he's better than Oman or Bluger right now?
I think he's better than Oman. I do. But Nils Oman is a player that you don't feel bad having as your 13th guy, I would say, is because you're not really trying to develop him into much more than he already is. So if he's watching from the press box a ton, that's unfortunate for him, but it's not really hindering the long-term value for the organization. Whereas Ratu, it's like I'm sure they hope that one day he could be like a legitimate 3C or maybe even like a tweener top 6 guy. So to get him all those minutes down in the farm, if you can, would be more beneficial. But I do think he's ahead of Oman. And then Teddy Bluger, Bluger is more of a pro. He's more refined. He's used to playing on that line with Garland. And when Joshua comes back, and they were excellent, for long stretches last year. So I would probably give him the edge over Ratu at this point.
None of those stretches are late, though. I mean, it was lightning in a bottle, but Teddy Bluger's very limited offensively. Otherwise, Teddy Bluger would have been more than Teddy Bluger by the time he arrives in Vancouver. But I think one of the reasons why Ratu didn't have that light bulb go off earlier is he was always making some sort of traction in his career. I mean, he played 12 games as a 19-year-old in this league. I think he always saw himself moving forward, albeit at a slower pace and a flatter curve than we anticipated when he was 16. But I think he always saw, and I think he finally saw himself hitting that full plateau in his career last year where he's like, why isn't it going better for me? And to me, this is great news. He is still, as we speak, 21 years of age. Guys, if he just arrived, landed in the Canucks lap yesterday, and this was our first look at Ratu as a 21-year-old in camp, people would be going crazy over this player. I think it's just we know his history, and so it's a little bit more muted. But he is 3 years younger, almost 3 years younger than guys like Sasson and other. I mean, there's still plenty of room for this guy. You talked about him being that tweener. I think that's absolutely on the menu here. He's 21 years of age.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And comparing him to Max Sasson or any of those players that they are nearly capped, right? We know
Right.
what they are. We don't know what he is. And I think you're absolutely right that it's really easy to look at Ratu and be surprised that he's only 21 years old because he's been on the radar for so long, and his career has taken such an undulous kind of route. Is that started out so high and then really struggled and then popped as a draft point of game player in the Liga, making the NHL for a handful of games at 19, back down to the AHL. And so it's really been a roller coaster for him, but you're absolutely right. Now we're starting to see that development go up in the right direction, and the foot speed, it's everything. And like I mentioned, the details of getting some of that pro level details in his game at the AHL level. And now we're seeing them migrate up to the NHL level, preseason granted, but that they're useful bits. And all those things are going to come together to make him a reliable bottom six player. And hopefully that'll allow him the opportunity to play in that spot and then kind of unearth some of his offensive potential as well and see if he can't get up into that top six kind of zone when he's in his prime.
Cam, help me out from a scouting perspective with skating. And of course, the Exhibit A here in Vancouver is Bo Horvat. The comment from Willie Desjardins, the famous one, boy, when I saw skating the first time, I thought this was going to be a problem. And then the next thing you know, Bo Horvat was one of the better skaters on the team. Can some guys improve and other guys just can't, that they're anchored, so to speak? And how does one improve it? Does one go find Barb Underhill or one of these skating coaches and work with them? Is there off ice ability to improve skating? Take me through how a player improves their skating and why some guys can while others can't.
So those who can't, there are some people that have physical limitations to literally their body. And so I think about Cody Hodgson as a Vancouver kind of comparable, is that he had a really short, his legs were quite short. And so he couldn't generate a really lengthy, powerful stride. But for everybody who doesn't have like an actual physical limitation that could hinder that, I think that everybody can improve their skating. Now, not everyone's going to be Connor McDavid or Nate McKinnon, but you can get to an NHL level if you're talented enough through literal hard work, perseverance, and intelligence. So that intelligence doesn't even necessarily have to be you. That can be your skating coach, and that willingness to break down that skill and rebuild it through repetition and repetition and repetition until it becomes second nature. And then, that's on ice, and then off ice, it's all about explosive work. And again, that dedication comes in, is like, how much time are you willing to live in the gym, to live, doing your wind sprints, to do the one-legged exploding movements back on one foot. It's not fun. I don't know about you guys, but I hate leg day at the gym. I'm like, oh God, here we go. It hurts and it's hard, but the payoff can be massive. And so that's when we see these players take those big strides with their skating. People should know, they should recognize the sweat and the blood and the tears that went into getting to that, because it isn't easy, but it is doable if you have that dedication to breaking it down and rebuilding it. So go ahead. Yeah.
Well, no, just so it's all stride based, basically. Are you willing to change your stride, or are you physically capable of changing your stride? And for those who are capable and willing, that's how skating gets better. And for some guys, just leg length or eliminates an ability to change the stride. Is that fair?
I mean, flexibility, huge as well, right? So having that flexibility, but again, that is something that you can create through practice, right? Through stretching, through different activities. But it's absolutely, you need to have an explosive stride out to the side, and then that toe gets that snap at the finish, and then you recover right underneath the body, and it's getting everything in order. The core strength, the leg strength, all the way down to the ankle flexion and that toe snap. It all has to come together. We talk about like Elias Pettersson completely remade his shot. And he talked about, I think he said he broke it down into something like 15 different individual movements, and he recreated it. It's very similar with skating. There's a million tiny little movements that you can do that will give you another percent. And I work with younger kids, and I even get them on film too, having them skating towards me, having them skating away from me. And then I can break it down. Here's where your leg is extending to. Here's where it needs to be extending to. Here's the depth you need to be getting in your posture to get there. Here's where you need to be leaned over. Are you generating enough power forward? Are you swinging those arms a little bit side to side? Do you have a heel kick like Vasily Podkolzin always had, this elaborate heel kick? Wasted movement, wasted time and effort. You're not recovering quick enough. So it's you could write a book on breaking down skating strides, and maybe one day I will.
Yeah, you should. You should.
Yeah.
Who would have thought
10 people will read it maybe, but yeah.
Who would have thought here, Cam, a team that has traded away an awful lot of draft capital over the last decade or so, and is ramping up to be a contender in the National Hockey League, at least so they hope. Who'd have thought that we'd have successful prospect stories coming out of training camp? But we've got that with Kirill Kudryavtsev being a bell of the ball, if you will. Elias Pettersson came in with expectation, couple loud giveaways, but I think he's maintained his status as somebody to watch. Fillmore Ulrichsen earns himself a contract. Who sort of stole the show for you from a prospect side of things? And are you as surprised as some of us that was even a story given where this team has been drafting?
Well, I mean, let's give the flowers, to the scouting staffs, right? So with Ratu, it was a pro scouting staff. With those other players you mentioned, it's the amateur staff. And so that's why those guys do the work, right? That's why a lot of them are unnamed and unmentioned often the time, but they are living in the rinks and they're finding these guys. And it doesn't always work out, but when you do find them, you got to give them credit. So for me, it's Kudryavtsev, and I've been pumping him up for a while. I really like this kid. I liked him as a draft eligible a lot more than being a 7th round pick too, but he just makes smart plays, and he's not overly big. He's not super speedy, but he has kind of across the board skills and he's smart. And I love that in a player. Pettersson's going to bring a different element. He's going to bring that smash mouth kind of thing that you're going to love and fans are going to really take notice of. But Kudryavtsev is going to be, I'm not saying he's Chris Tanev, but when Chris Tanev was here and he was just, we always say he looked like he was skating with a cigarette in his mouth, right? He was just so calm and collected out there. And that's Kudryavtsev. And I think that, he's probably kind of jumped over 3 or 4 guys on that depth chart, and that I expect he's probably the number 1 call up on the blue line, right? Like Wolanin, we'll see. He was an all-star in the AHL last year, didn't even get a sniff with the Canucks, right? Like he's not in their plans. He's on waivers again. I assume he'll get through it too, probably. But yeah, I think Kudryavtsev it has to kind of be that story, is that he's now knocking on the door. And there wasn't that long ago where people were kind of wondering, like, is he going to go back as an overager to the OHL? Is he going to play in the ECHL next year? It's like, no, this guy's going to play big minutes in the AHL right at 20.
I mean, 3 years from now, Kudryavtsev and Tom Wielander as a pairing
could be a lot of fun. They wouldn't be big and they wouldn't be explosive, but they would do a lot of smart things with the puck and just, make sure it gets out, make sure it gets in, make those outlet passes, use their feet. I think it's not outrageous, right? And it's easy to look at prospects and be like, oh, let's project them down the line together. And often it doesn't work, but that's
the danger is too, like if Hughes and Roenick are still here, presumably they are, that is not a big front four of defense. So maybe splitting those 2 guys up in Wielander and Kudryavtsev would probably be the MO there. But hey, there's guys, and it's good asset management there to have.
And you'll have Pettersson hopefully too, right? And he'll be that smash mouth guy. So whether he can mix and match with that, with Wielander, yeah.
Let me rein the 2 of you back in here. Can we talk about the contemporary Vancouver?
You may.
We're on 3 years down the road here.
Sorry, you guys want to hear about the 2028 draft class?
Yeah, exactly. Take it out a whole bunch of
works for
who knows what I know.
Yes.
Okay, so let me ask you a forward looking question, but one that's maybe a little closer than 3 years away. If everything hits on our Steve Baines, and he's still here, right? He's still fighting for a gig. What line does he play on? What position does he play? What special teams does he play? What's his NHL profile?
If everything breaks right?
If everything breaks right for the pride of Surrey, our Steve Baines.
Everything breaks right. Let's just call him a first ballot Hall of Famer here. Just get the number to the rafters right away. No, I mean, realistically, if everything breaks right for him, he's a 3rd liner who can chip in maybe on the PK, who can maybe play on your second power play unit. He's got that kind of jam, that offensive skill. He's got a bit of juice to his game. And I think that's very likely that's kind of the top end for him. You wouldn't expect a player of his ilk to be a top 6 contributor on a good team anyways. But I think that, again, very impressive that he's still with camp, and a testament to just how well he's played all through the preseason through Young Stars, is that he's making a mark. And the team is obviously like, we want to get another look. We want to give him as much leash as we can, because he looks a lot better than he did in his little call up, his cup of coffee with the Canucks last year. Sure, it was kind of adrenaline fueled that first game where you're like, look at him getting in on the forecheck, and then it really petered out. He wasn't able to generate shots. He wasn't able to really get in on that forecheck anymore. But now and the adrenaline should be gone, is that he's looking like he can do that. He's looking like he can be a viable NHLer who can get in and bang a little bit, cause some havoc, create some turnovers, and he knows what to do with the puck, obviously, right? He knows how to generate some offense at the junior level, at the AHL level. I don't expect that to translate into too much at the NHL level, but to say that he couldn't one day be a 35, 40-point player, I don't think that's outrageous.
And lastly, from me, Cam, Hughes, Hronek, Susie Myers, Forbert, Desharnais. Is that the best way to slot your defense pairs for the start of the season?
In my opinion, it's the only way to do it. Is that I don't think you want to move Desharnais up and expense for Myers. But I keep reiterating it every week. I say it to you, is they need to find another right shot defenseman, because that third pair is going to be trouble long term. It might work in the playoffs when things get really tight and really banging up. But it could still be exposed for its foot speed and an inability to move the puck quickly up ice. So that's a pair that could get hemmed in really, really easily. So I do think that it has to be the option, the setup for it for the season, until they can add another piece.
The question is their urgency on that matter. Do you think it's 5-11? Do you think that Rick Tocchet has seen these guys on the ice now and has made this a 5-alarm emergency to get that right shot defenseman, or a
Tocchet was involved in the recruitment of, especially Desharnais. So
everything looks great on paper till you see it on the ice, right?
Yeah. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. I think that you can't make it a 5-alarm fire at this point, because trades won't happen. It's too early in the season. We're going to have to wait, because all the teams that know they're going to be sellers are going to wait until the last minute so they can maximize their value. And then the teams that don't think they're sellers need a chance to suck for half the year and figure out that they are in fact sellers. So I think we're looking at post-Christmas. We know Rutherford likes to do his business early. So if they made a deal going into that Four Nations face-off, something like that wouldn't surprise me in February, right? Yep. And then it gives the team a chance to gel and mesh down the stretch. And I'm always a big proponent of that, because not only are you getting the chemistry, but you're also getting a lot more bang for your buck. You're not getting 20 games out of a player. You're getting 35 or 40 maybe, and then you have the option to resign them if you like them, and you can know the player a little bit better. So I do think that'll be a 2025 issue.
Okay.
I'll ask you about, just because Blake brought his name up today as we were shooting the breeze, Provorov in Columbus, who's a UFA to be at 27 and $4.725 million, and can play both sides, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Is on ice product?
Not the player we thought he was going to be.
No,
obviously.
no.
So it's a reduced expectation there. But if you just threw out what you thought he was going to be, and you take the player that it is now, and the fact that they are probably willing to make some trades right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's an option. It would be an option, and he's a good enough player. Like, he's someone that you can feel okay with playing on your second pair. He does have a lot of baggage that comes with him, and so whatever team, if they do trade for him, has to recognize that you're airlifting him into a team and into an environment with your club that it might mess with that chemistry too. So that would definitely be weighing on me if I was calling the shots and I was kicking the tires on him. So I would need to know him as a person a little bit better, or get some, just some feelings that he would come in and just not ruffle feathers. But no, I think as a rental could be an option, at the right price anyway.
Right. Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Next Tuesday we'll reconvene and we'll do predictions and all that fun stuff on the eve of the season. Thank you, Cam Robinson. Appreciate that.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on, guys.